Hi, we are the potatoes from the Potato Help Organization.
We are proposing a solution in order to help prevent the natural disaster that hits the Philippines each year.
The natural disaster that hits the Philippines often is called typhoon. A typhoon is a tropical storm that has winds at a speed of 74 miles per hour. A typhoon lasts for weeks and the eye of the storm is 20 to 30 miles wide and can get wider up to 400 miles. Typhoons originate when the water in the ocean is warmer than 80 Fahrenheit. The heat evaporates and forms clouds and turns to gas. The temperature of the atmosphere is not warm but cold. Typhoon rotates in a counterclockwise direction. Most of the storms form in the western North Pacific Ocean, which includes the South China and Philippine seas. Our organization chose a specific location in the Philippines that gets hit the most. The place that gets damaged is the Eastern Visayas. The reason to that is whenever a typhoon comes in the western Pacific Ocean, it will always hit the Eastern Visayas since east of the Philippines lies on the West Pacific Ocean. There was a devastating typhoon which was Haiyan that hit the Eastern Visayas recently. Sadly, according to Gapminder, the Philippines' GNI per capita is $3,677. It shows that they are in a low-middle income country, so they don't really have that much money to repair their damaged houses. Typhoon Haiyan killed 3,725 people, with 17,821 people who were injured and 1,574 that are missing. Typhoons can create huge waves in the sea and can cause the land that it can reach to flood. The huge waves can cause towns and cities to flood too. Not only that it creates huge waves, but also strong winds. These strong winds can be very strong that it will damage a lot of people's houses. It can flatten people's houses and make trees fall and flip the cars over. However, we have a solution to that. In order to prevent the typhoons that come to the Philippines to bring a lot of damages, the solution that we are proposing is building a typhoon house resistant. There are normal houses but with better appropriate materials being used. We propose to build a typhoon house resistant because with the scientific principle of force that is used when typhoons damage the houses is called compression. According to PBS, it is a type of force that squeezes things together. Compression isn't only squeezing, but it can also mean to flatten things. Because of the load that typhoon uses, which is wind load, meaning when there's wind that blows on a house and causes it to fall. Typhoon creates a lot of strong winds which makes houses to flatten, which can also be called compress. However, when we build a typhoon house resistant, we will have a better materials that can withstand typhoon. If we don't have a solution like building typhoon house resistant, then each year the governments in the Philippines will have to use more money. And I don't think they would want that. Based on Reuters, Typhoon Haiyan, which was the latest typhoon that occurred, damaged a lot of crops and infrastructures. The crops and infrastructures that it destroyed happened to worth at least $563 million. Not only that Typhoon Haiyan destroyed the crops that worth that much, but also houses and buildings. According to BBC News, someone in the government of the Philippines said that the damages it brought would cost a lot of money to reconstruct. It could cost as much as $6 billion. I don't think the government would want to pay that much money again. It might be even more than that next time. Now, we will explain more in detail with scientific explanation about how our solution to this will able to work.
The typhoon-resistant house structure that we are proposing to the government of the Philippines to put into consideration to reduce the damage made by typhoons each year in Eastern Visayas. This solution does not prevent the typhoon from happening, however, it does reduce the damage it will make. The advantages of having a typhoon-resistant house is that the slabs, as you can see in the picture, is very high or it can be very thick. That will prevent the water from seeping in and making the house float. Also, if the house doesn't float up, it will stop it from colliding with other properties in which will create more damages. There are many factors that need to put into consideration when building a typhoon-resistant house. One of it is that it is best to build the house away from strong surge winds, which are usually on the coast. The roof of the houses need to be about 30-degree angle to 45-degree to avoid it being blown right off. The circular shape of the house slow the wind and stop it from destroying properties, since there is not a flat surface in which will stop it. The roof and floorwork need radial shape, so the power from the wind will disperse around the structure instead of impacting in a certain place. Reinforcement of impact windows are very important because it helps prevent wind and water from entering. Oversized thrust hangers keep the roof from blowing off, stuck to the wall. A strong surge of wind blows on the structure horizontally, and it happens when a typhoon strikes. Our solution is to make the structure more typhoon-proof, is to add more triangular shapes or cross bracing in the structure to balance the weight so it would be more stable. When the wind blows, it is bending the structure, but the cross bracing and triangular shape help reduce the force that is impacting the dead load and stop it from bending, which can lead to the structure breaking in half. When pressure is added to the corner of a triangle, the two sides squeeze together while the bottom sides stretch apart as tension. We can guarantee that this solution will work because it had also worked in other countries to help reduce the damages made by typhoon, hurricanes, and cyclones. In Pensacola, Florida, home to one of the world's first hurricane-resistant houses, the structure and design of the house is very different from the ones above, but the properties are still very similar. This house was created by Mark Ziegler, who have been through 9 disastrous hurricanes. The dome home can withstand 160 miles per hour wind. During 2004, Hurricane Ivan hit Florida with 12 continuous hours of large and wind surge of 130 miles per hour and rainstorms. By the time Ivan calmed down, the dome home was among a few houses in the community that were still standing.
During the recent typhoon that struck eastern Visayas, 280,968 families were home and 219,857 houses were damaged. This caused a major problem because people were not able to access clean waters, which led to diseases. The amount that was needed for cleanups and aid was approximately $6 billion. As time passed, it would be bigger damage, and also the typhoon would be bigger and take more lives of people. The materials that are needed to build typhoon-resistant house might be a bit more expensive for people with a GNI per capita of 3,677. However, to prevent the damages from increasing and the amount of money needed for the cleanups, instead of using the donation money entirely for cleanups and aid, it should be used to prevent the damage from growing for the future typhoon. According to Deltec Home, the construction of the house structure is very different from normal house construction, in which a lot of materials are needed to build a typhoon-resistant home. This will benefit a lot for the amount of damages that will impact the lives of people. The government does not have to worry about the aid money needed for the citizens and cleanups. The region will also be able to recover quickly. Unfortunately, there are a few limitations to our solution. First of all, the materials that we will have to use are quite expensive. The materials that need to be used are reinforced concrete, brick, aluminum, and steel. Aluminum is usually expensive. The last limitation to this is how the Philippines' GNI per capita is a bit low. As I said before, their GNI per capita is only about $3,677. Therefore, the citizen would not be able to afford to rebuild their house to be more typhoon resistant. The solution that we're proposing will likely to have a positive impact because, like we said before, the only problem is the price of the materials being used. However, other than that, there's a high chance that this would work and will help prevent a lot of damages were made by typhoons that come each year. If the Philippines have enough money to build these kind of typhoon house resistant, they won't have to worry a lot for the coming typhoons.
The damages made will decrease and the time period that is needed to fully recover will also be a lot less.